Welcome to our video, The Sacred Covenant, the story of the Ark of the Covenant. Prepare yourself for a profound and revealing journey through one of the greatest symbols of faith and power in human history. The Ark of the Covenant is not just an ancient artifact, but the very manifestation of the covenant between God and His people, carrying within it miracles, promises, and eternal lessons. Throughout this video, we will explore how the Ark guided, protected, and transformed Israel, and why its legacy still resonates today. Every detail tells a story of unwavering faith and devotion. If you value this type of content, be sure to leave a like and watch every minute of the video. This not only helps us continue to bring you inspiring stories, but also allows you to delve deeper into understanding this sacred symbol that shaped the destiny of a nation. Get ready to discover the power of faith and covenant that spans generations. Let's go on this journey together. Moses was atop Mount Sinai, enveloped in the sacred presence of God, when he received detailed instructions for the construction of an object that would become the most sacred of all for the people of Israel, the Ark of the Covenant. It was a moment of profound revelation and responsibility, for the Ark would symbolize the eternal covenant between God and His chosen people. God instructed Moses to make the Ark from acacia wood, a durable and resilient material. The Ark was to be 2.5 cubits long, 1.5 cubits wide, and 1.5 cubits high. These measurements, though specific, were more than mere numbers. They symbolized divine perfection and order. Moses listened carefully as God continued to describe the Ark. It was to be overlaid with pure gold inside and out, with a crown of gold around it. The Ark would not just be a chest, but a sacred work of art, reflecting the glory and majesty of God. Moses imagined the gold gleaming under the desert sun, a tangible symbol of God's holiness. God also commanded Moses to make 4 gold rings for the corners of the Ark, so it could be carried by poles made of acacia wood, also overlaid with gold. No one was to touch the Ark directly. The poles were never to be removed, symbolizing that the holiness of God should not be profaned. But the most important aspect of the Ark was its cover, known as the mercy seat. God instructed Moses to make 2 cherubim of gold, one on each end of the cover, with their wings spread upward, covering the mercy seat. The faces of the cherubim were to be turned toward each other, looking down at the place where God would manifest Himself. "There," said God, "I will meet with you, and from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim which are upon the Ark of the Testimony, I will speak to you about everything I will command you for the children of Israel." The Ark of the Covenant would not just be an object of worship, but the place where God would meet with Moses to guide the people. It was a symbol of His continuous and faithful presence, a constant reminder of His covenant with Israel. With these instructions in mind, Moses descended from Mount Sinai to begin the sacred task. Under his leadership, the chosen artisans, skilled in working with gold and wood, followed every detail of the divine instructions. The work was arduous, but each hammer blow and every polish was done with reverence and devotion. When the Ark was finally completed, it was a spectacle of beauty and holiness. It gleamed under the sunlight, a masterpiece of gold and wood, but more than that, it was the throne of God among men. As Moses gazed upon the finished Ark, he knew he was standing before something truly divine, something that would forever change the relationship between Israel and God. Thus, the Ark of the Covenant was created, not only as a symbol of faith but as a testimony of the sacred covenant between God and His people, a covenant that would be remembered by all future generations. After 40 years of wandering in the desert, the people of Israel finally reached the banks of the Jordan River, the last obstacle that separated them from the Promised Land. Joshua, who now led the Israelites after the death of Moses, knew that the crossing of the Jordan would be a crucial moment in the history of his nation. The Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred symbol of God's presence, was to lead the way. Joshua received clear instructions from the Lord. The priest carrying the ark were to go before the people. The presence of the ark would guide Israel and demonstrate, once again, the power and faithfulness of God in fulfilling His promises. The Jordan River was in full flood, with fast and deep waters, making the crossing seemingly impossible for such a large people. But Joshua trusted fully in the words of the Lord. When the feet of the priest carrying the ark touched the waters of the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "The waters that come down from above will gather together in one place, and the waters that go down will disappear, and the people will cross over on dry ground." With unwavering faith, Joshua ordered the priests to approach the river with the ark on their shoulders. The people watched in silence, their hearts filled with expectation and fear. As the priests set foot on the edge of the water, a miracle began to unfold before their eyes. The waters of the river, obeying the voice of the Creator, stopped. They piled up in the distance, forming a liquid wall, while the rest of the riverbed quickly dried up. Just as the Lord had promised, the way to the promised land was open. The priests, carrying the ark, advanced to the middle of the dry Jordan bed and stood there, steadfast, while all the people of Israel crossed over to the other side. Men, women, children, and even the pack animals all crossed safely, stepping onto dry ground where a raging river had once flowed. The Ark of the Covenant, a beacon of hope and power, was at the center of this miracle. After all the people had crossed, the Lord gave Joshua another order. 12 men, one from each tribe of Israel, were to take 12 stones from the middle of the river, from where the priests were, and carry them back to the camp. These stones would be an everlasting memorial for future generations, so that all would know how the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, and how God fulfilled His promise to lead His people into the land He had sworn to give their ancestors. When the priests finally emerged from the river, carrying the ark, the waters returned to their place, flowing as before, filling the Jordan to its banks. But the memory of the miracle was forever engraved in the hearts of the people. The Ark of the Covenant had once again guided Israel, demonstrating God's unchanging power and constant presence among them. Now, with the crossing complete and the people safely in the Promised Land, the Ark would continue to be a living symbol of the covenant between God and Israel, guiding them in their battles and bearing witness to God's commitment to protect and bless His chosen people. After the miraculous crossing of the Jordan, the people of Israel found themselves facing a new challenge: the fortified city of Jericho. Jericho was one of the oldest and most well-defended cities in the region, with imposing walls that seemed impenetrable. Conquering Jericho would be the first major test for Israel in their campaign for the Promised Land, and everyone knew that victory would only be possible with divine intervention. The Lord gave Joshua an unusual strategy for taking the city. There would be no fierce battles or attempts to tear down the walls with human strength. Instead, the Ark of the Covenant, a symbol of God's presence among the people, would play a central role in the conquest of Jericho. Joshua gathered the priests together and gave them the instructions he had received from the Lord. You are to carry the Ark of the Covenant and march around the city, while 7 priests blow trumpets with ram's horns in front of the Arkansas. For 6 days you are to march around the city once, and on the 7th day you are to march around it 7 times. After the 7th circuit, the priests are to blow the trumpets, and all the people are to shout with a loud shout. Then the walls of the city will fall down. With the Ark of the Covenant in front of them, the priests began their march around Jericho, followed by the people in silence. For 6 days they circled the city once a day, in obedience to the word of the Lord. The people of Jericho watched, confused and apprehensive, not understanding what the Israelites were planning. On the 7th day, at dawn, Joshua ordered the people to get up and march around the city 7 times, as the Lord had instructed. The Ark of the Covenant stood in front, and the priests' trumpets resounded along the walls of Jericho, filling the air with a sound that seemed to echo the power of God. After the 7th circuit, the priests gave a long blast on their trumpets, and Joshua called to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." In unison, the people of Israel raised their voices in a great war cry. At that very moment, the walls of Jericho, which had stood unshakable for so long, began to shake. The sound was deafening as the stones crumbled, and within moments, the mighty walls fell, crumbling completely. With the walls in ruins, the warriors of Israel advanced and took the city. Jericho, which seemed invincible, was conquered not by military force, but by the power of the Lord, manifested through the Ark of the Covenant. This extraordinary victory was a testimony to all nations of the power of God and the faithfulness of His promises. The Ark of the Covenant, which had guided the people across the Jordan, now led the way in the conquest of the Promised Land, demonstrating that nothing is impossible for God when His people obey His will. After the miraculous victories at Jericho and other battles, the Ark of the Covenant continued to be the sacred symbol of God's presence among the people of Israel. However, one of the darkest moments in the history of the Ark occurred when the Israelites, confident in their past victories, underestimated the power of God and treated the Ark more as a talisman than as a representation of the sacred covenant. During the time when Eli was high priest of Israel, the Philistines, the Israelites' fierce enemies, launched a campaign against them. In the ensuing battle, Israel suffered a devastating defeat. In desperation, the elders of Israel decided to bring the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield, believing that its presence would guarantee victory, not considering that true strength lay in obedience and faithfulness to God. Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, who were not men of good character, carried the Ark of the Covenant to the battlefield. When the Ark arrived, the army of Israel gave a great shout of joy, shaking the earth. The Philistines, initially terrified when they heard that the Ark had arrived, remembered the mighty deeds of Israel's God in Egypt. However, instead of fleeing, they prepared to fight even more fiercely, determined to win or die. In the ensuing battle, the Philistines defeated Israel again. Hophni and Phinehas were killed, and the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Philistines, an event that shocked and demoralized the entire people of Israel. News of the capture of the Ark and the death of his sons reached Eli. Upon hearing about the Ark, fell from his seat, broke his neck, and died. The Philistines took the Ark of the Covenant to Ashdod, one of their chief cities, and placed it in the temple of Dagon, their god. However, they soon discovered that the presence of the Ark brought with it the power and judgment of God. The next morning they found the statue of Dagon lying face down on the ground in front of the Arkansas. They raised the statue, but the next day Dagon was lying again, this time with his head and hands cut off, only his torso remaining intact. In addition, the Lord sent a terrible plague on the people of Ashdod, afflicting them with boils. Terrified, the Philistines decided to move the Ark to another city, Gath, but the same thing happened there. Wherever the Ark went, God's judgment was manifested, causing great destruction and suffering. Finally, the Philistines, fearing that they would be utterly destroyed, decided to return the Ark to Israel. They consulted their priests and diviners, who suggested sending the Ark back with an offering of reparation, 5 golden boils and 5 golden mice, symbolizing the plagues they had suffered. They placed the Ark on a new cart, pulled by 2 cows that had never been hitched, and let the cows go their way. The cows, without any human guidance, headed straight for the land of Israel, all the way to the city of Beth Shemesh. The people of Beth Shemesh, upon seeing the Ark return, rejoiced and offered sacrifices to the Lord. However, some men looked into the Ark, disrespecting its holiness, and were punished by God. The Ark of the Covenant was then taken to Kiriath-Jearim, where it was kept in the house of Abinadab, and there it remained for many years. Capture and return of the Ark was a powerful reminder to Israel that God's presence was not to be manipulated or treated lightly. The Ark, with all its power and holiness, was a symbol of the divine covenant that required reverence, obedience, and sincere faith. Years had passed since the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Kiriath-Jearim, where it was kept in the house of Abinadab. During that time, the ark, the ultimate symbol of God's presence, had remained in relative obscurity while Israel underwent significant transformations. Finally, with the accession of King David to the throne, a new era of devotion and centrality of faith began, and David decided to bring the ark to Jerusalem, the new capital of Israel. David desired that Jerusalem be not only the political center of the kingdom but also the spiritual center. He knew that the Ark of the Covenant should occupy a place of honor in the city, symbolizing the unification of Israel under divine leadership. With great enthusiasm, David organized a grand celebration to bring the Ark from Kiriath Jearim to Jerusalem. Amid music, dancing, and songs of praise, the Ark was placed on a new cart driven by Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab. The people followed the Ark with joy, recognizing the moment as a historic and deeply spiritual occasion. However, as the ark was being transported, the oxen pulling the cart stumbled, and Uzzah instinctively reached out to grab the ark. The moment Uzzah touched the ark, he fell dead, struck by the sacredness of the sacred object. Uzzah's sudden death came as a terrible shock to everyone, especially King David. David was fearful and confused, wondering how he could bring the ark to Jerusalem when such a seemingly simple gesture had resulted in such tragedy. David then decided to leave the ark in the house of Obed-Edom, a Levite who lived near the scene of the incident. For 3 months the ark remained in the house of Obed-Edom, and during that time the Lord greatly blessed his house and all his possessions. News of these blessings reached David's ears, and he was filled with reverence and decided to bring the ark to Jerusalem with greater care and respect. This time, David organized a new transport, ensuring that the Levites, as prescribed by the law, carried the ark on their shoulders with golden poles, without touching it directly. The procession proceeded with great reverence, and the joy of the people was restored. David, dressed in fine linen, danced with all his might before the Lord, demonstrating sincere devotion and a genuine celebration of God's presence in his life and in the lives of the people of Israel. Finally, the Ark of the Covenant arrived in Jerusalem and was placed in a special tent that David had prepared. The king offered burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord, blessing the people in God's name. It was a moment of deep joy and unity, marking the consolidation of Jerusalem as the center of Israel's spiritual life. Years later, David's son Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent work dedicated to the Lord. When the temple was completed, Solomon gathered all Israel for a solemn ceremony in which the Ark of the Covenant was brought into the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place in the temple. Only the priests were allowed to enter the Holy of Holies, and the Ark was placed beneath the wings of the carved cherubim, which filled the space with their majesty. When the ark was placed in the Holy of Holies, it contained only the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, the same ones that Moses had received on Mount Sinai. When the priest left the Holy of Holies, the glory of the Lord filled the temple in the form of a thick cloud, so dense that the priests could not continue their services. This cloud symbolized the divine presence, confirming that God had accepted the temple as his dwelling place among the Israelites. Thus, the Ark of the Covenant found its final place in the heart of Solomon's temple, becoming the ultimate symbol of the covenant between God and Israel. From that moment on, Jerusalem was not only the political capital but also the spiritual center of the kingdom, where the people gathered to worship and sacrifice to the God of their ancestors. The Ark, which had guided, protected, and blessed Israel on all their journeys, now rested in the temple, continually reminding the people of the Lord's holiness, justice, and mercy. A historia da Arca da Alianca, desde sua construco no deserto 8 sua colicaqueo no templo de Salomeo, e testemunho do compromisso fiel de Deus com seu povo e da necessidade da reverência e obediência a sua vontade. A arca, mesmo sua invisibilidade posterior, continuava a ser símbolo eterno da presença de Deus e da aliança que ele fez com Israel, pacto que moldou o destino da humanidade e que ecoa através dos tempos.